recording and then we can get going. And as people jump on, they should be muted when they come on. So hopefully it won't be too much of a problem. So I am so excited to do this book club. You should all have this book, the red one, Think and Grow Rich. The idea is I have never in my life run a book discussion club. I have never even been to a book club. So feel free to jump in. It's really a discussion. I read about how to do it, but this is one of my favorite books, and I'm actually going through it. I think this is my 5th time doing it with you. I said this time as the moderator, I'm going through, and mine is like all color coded and everything. Amazing book, and every single time I go through it, I get something new out of it. So the idea is to go through 3 chapters every week for the next 6 weeks. I can tell you some chapters are so thick and have so much information. I'm hoping we can get through it. So that's the plan. I'm thinking an hour and a half, maybe every Tuesday, see how we do with that. And we can kind of figure out as a group, you know, what's working, what's not working, what we have to do. It's an open discussion. So feel free to help me out if some of it. How many people have read the whole book all the way through more than once or once? Yeah. And the rest of you are reading it along with me? Okay. So my automatic light. All right, so let's get started. Any initial comments about the book? I've read the whole thing, so a number of times, so it's a little different to me. But I'm interested to know, just off the bat, what are some first thoughts you're having? Go ahead, Paul.
So this is the first time I'm reading this version, and it's quite different than the versions that I've read before. It's very interesting. So it's the version that I've read before didn't have all the uppercase highlight kind of points.
Okay.
So it's interesting to kind of get that extra emphasis that they're putting on it.
Yeah, so it's my understanding, I originally read the initial one, but I probably read it like 20 years ago, and I actually couldn't find my copy because I write in my margins no matter what I read. If it's a business book, especially, like I write in the margins, I write little thoughts as I go, and I haven't come across my original one, but I know that this one is different, which I started to read, I think 2 years ago. I started to read this one, but it doesn't tell me what's in the original one and what's in the other one. So just as a background for all of you, this unedited version, it's my understanding, is twice as thick as the one that was originally published. Twice as thick. They took out all the 4 times, you think?
Yeah.
So they took out like all the spirituality and all of that. So I think that would actually kind of be interesting to listen to, just because I think the whole book is spirituality. Like, I don't know how you take it out. Hold on, I'm gonna, because I think it goes on automatically. There you go. It makes me brighter. So just thoughts. So let's start in the author's preface, the beginning of it. I don't think I need, did everyone read the book or no? I know there was 1 or 2 people that said they were going to jump on even though if they didn't read it. And this will be recorded. If you miss one, this will be recorded and put in the member resource library, so you can go back to it if you need to, or if any time in the future, just to go back. But I think I might do it. It was interesting today when I was getting ready to do this. I read the preface again, and it said the best way to go through this book is do it 1 chapter a week. And I was like, oh, we're being a little aggressive. So we'll see what we do. So just wanted to go through the preface a little bit. If you haven't done it, it was really that Andrew Carnegie pretty much not hired, he didn't get paid for it for 20 years. Napoleon Hill to study success for 20 years with no guarantee of pay or riches. Who would have taken that job? Anybody? No, it doesn't sound like a great one, right? I guess to be in the presence of Andrew Carnegie was probably worth it. And my understanding is he made him look in the mirror and, say that he will be more successful than Andrew Carnegie was for 30 days. So the interesting thing that in this book, when I originally started it, is he started always referencing The Secret, which now has come out to a movie, has come out to the Law of Attraction. So it was interesting when I started reading it again, I don't think I put that all together. Did any of you read The Secret and you're like, wait, I think I've heard The Secret? And then I was wondering, oh, I guess that's where the movie and everything else came from, which I don't think I put it all together until maybe 2 reads ago. And that's not really fair because I read it 3 times back to back. Go ahead.
Well, I know when I was reading it, exactly, it was that. I go, this just reminds me of Abraham Hicks and the Law of Attraction. Is just, positive thinking, and I'm actually doing a little study right now on you can't afford the luxury of a negative thought. And that's exactly what he's saying in this book. There's several parts, I think, in the first chapter where he says that.
Yeah.
Yeah, just amazing. Mm-hmm.
The aligning and reading it now, after I follow Abraham, after I follow like all of these other people now, to go back and say, wow, this was written in 1937.
Mm-hmm.
He had the secret. Like it was wild to me. Also, I think in the beginning and the prefacing, he talks about much of that which is taught in the schools is of no value whatsoever in connection with the business of earning a living or accumulating riches, which I think we can kind of agree with at this point. I also find it interesting that what was happening in 1937, even after the Depression, is exactly the same as today. I didn't feel like there was...
Exactly what it was. I'm sorry. That's exactly what, this is Kelly. That's exactly what jumped out to me throughout the book in the first 3 chapters. It was just like whatever they were referencing back in the Depression, the mood, all this kind of stuff. I'm like, yeah, that's relevant for today.
Exactly. Even entrepreneurship. And I think it was kind of interesting. I'm a kid of, well, I went through high school in the 80s, but I think I always thought I was going to go to college, but even today, I think today more than when I grow up, people are wondering if it's even worth it to go to college, right? Because of the cost associated with college. And, if you're going to come out and be an entrepreneur and follow your passion anyway, is it really worth it? So as we start to read this, he constantly is referring to The Secret. And it's never told us what the secret is, but it's kind of inferred, and it'll get deeper and deeper as we go through the book. But it just says, those who are ready and searching for it may pick it up through the book, where I think is also the law of attraction.
Mm-hmm.
It says, if you are ready, you will recognize the secret at least once in every chapter. And Sue, I think you told us what it was that you started to recognize it, right?
Yeah.
You make the discovery on your own. And then the really interesting piece was the amount of people that he spoke to put the book together, right? The Henry Ford, George Eastman, Theodore Roosevelt, a lot of big ones, right? Ford, I think, was on the list. Charles Schwab, he has a lot to say throughout the book.
Yeah, I thought that was really cool, all these names of people that I know, but I had no idea, how they were all related to each other. They were all in the same time frame of development. Yeah, it's like, wow.
Alexander Graham Bell, I thought that was crazy. Yeah. Yeah. And then it was such like a universal truth. I think he used that a lot. That except what he calls, I thought it was interesting. What he calls the ether, as we call universe. He calls it the ether, which was really interesting. So let's start chapter 1. Setting an intention. The man who thought his way to partnership with Thomas Edison, and this goes through. I thought this was a great story, and it took a couple times of reading it through to kind of make the connection. I was like, well, he thought it. Do we kind of think wild things, or do we really have that burning desire that's behind it? And I think what he's saying, which is also what Abraham Hicks says, is that not only having a plan or a wanting, but the burning desire. Mm-hmm. What are your thoughts about what's the difference with desire?
I, in ways, actually had a little problem with the word desire, only because in the Buddhist tradition that I study, desire is considered a poison. It's considered one of the 5 root poisons. So throughout the first chapter, I've got to get a little clarity on that, do a little meditation, and kind of come to, some understanding of that. But I thought it was kind of interesting. I understood where they were coming from, but in other schools that I've been taught, that was just like a little bit of a problem. So.
Okay. Anybody else thoughts on that?
I just got out of it for desire. It just makes me think, like, when I wanted to become a veterinarian, I truly had what he described as desire. It was like I had the drive. I had the, nothing was stopping me kind of attitude. I was going to succeed. It was really, really going to happen. So I guess I never used the word desire. It was just, it was like I'm doing this kind of attitude, and you're just knowing it's going to happen. That's to me what desire is.
Yeah. I think it's like a burning passion too, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah. We feel passion in our work and what we do, and we try not to ever think of failure. I think one of the keys here is not looking at the downside. It's just always thinking and believing that everything is attainable, which is hard to do, but that burning desire. And I think a lot I got out of this chapter, the introduction, was setting an intention and then following it with action steps.
Yeah.
I think it's the word desire, if you think about it as a priority, that could be a switch for 2, because a lot of times people will say, oh, I don't have the time, or I can't fit it in, I can't do this. And if the priority or the desire is strong enough, you always find a way to do those things that you prioritize, that are really a priority, no matter what.
There's enough time to do everything. Here I underlined in here, because I saw he had made up his mind to stand by until he succeeded. Right? So nothing got in his way. I underlined again, when one is truly ready for a thing, he puts in his appearance. And I think that's what you said, Paul. When you're ready, you do it. You don't let anything get in your way. When people say, I don't have time for this, I don't have time for that, it's because you're just not there yet. I see that in NLBP a lot. The people that show up all the time and how their businesses change and how they make connections and how they do all the other stuff. And then people that say, I don't have time for this, I don't have time to come home, I don't have time for the calls, I don't have time. And then, they start to flail, and I'm like, I can't make you have time. You'll have the time when you're ready. I think that's in anyone's business, right? Mm-hmm. Or anything that's passion. It doesn't even have to be business. It's anything. If it means enough to you, you'll find a way. You'll absolutely find a way if it means enough to you. Right? I've seen great things happen, not only in business, even in personal lives, right? When people find the money or find the time or find the connection to make something happen. for them.
And it's also not just thinking about it, right? The title Think and Grow Rich isn't, in the law of attraction, isn't just, well, let me think about it and kind of manifest it that way. It also, in most cases, requires that you have to take action and do something.
Yes, continuously. Every single day, right? That it's not just thinking. And I find that the reviews on this book, regardless of the edition, is people putting it down or criticizing by saying, well, just thinking about something isn't going to get me anything. It's just thinking about it, and they're missing the part of the action, the burning desire, the every single day I'm going to do something, one thing towards this goal. I think that's where the one thing. David, do you want to say something?
Yeah, that's one of the criticisms that the movie The Secret has as well. If you watch the movie, it's all about the secret, but it doesn't really talk too much about actually taking a step and moving towards what you want. So that was another, I guess, example of that.
Yeah.
So people would naturally maybe pull that out of the book and, provide the same feedback, when I think it's pretty clear in here, in the next chapter, where he starts talking about the, creating a statement that you read aloud. There's clearly a part of that is action oriented. Like, what will you do in exchange for what you want?
Right.
Or we can leave that till we get to it. But
yeah, and giving up. The thing that has been like ringing in my head is the 3 feet from gold.
Mm-hmm.
Like everything I'm doing now, I'm like, am I 3 feet from gold? Like, like that. It's that not giving up, or not. Well, one, seeking expert opinion, right? Like, knowing that you don't have all the answers, which is exactly what a mastermind is all about, right? Mm-hmm. Is, seeking expert opinion. I find that entrepreneurs, I don't just find it, I think it's actually a proven thing. Entrepreneurs usually give up right before they make it, right? Because sometimes there's a lull, or there's a big leap right before you make it big. Mm-hmm. And entrepreneurs a lot of times just kind of go, I can't do it. I can't do it.
Or they follow up one less time than they need to. They think, I only need to call someone once, and if they're not interested in collaborating in some way, then I should just stop.
Yeah, great example.
When it used to be, I think, six touches before a person would take action on information, and now it's like 12 to 18, because we are so distracted by the electronic devices that we carry around, and the bombardment of information that we can have at our fingertips. I mean, we basically can answer any question in about 10 seconds.
Yeah.
With the amount of information we have, not to mention all the, videos that distract us all day long on different social media platforms.
Right. It's temporary defeat. And I think as entrepreneurs, we kind of all feel that sometimes. It's that those really, really highs and those really, really lows, and getting through those, and knowing the path is there. There's the whole story that he goes on and talks about, what the color child and the 50 cents, like, just give me 50 cents.
Yeah.
And he said it's the first time that he saw someone defeat a colored child defeat a white man, I think is what he said in the book, or paraphrasing. And he sat there, and I just need to study, how did that happen? How did that happen? Because the child had no fear, or maybe she did, but she sure as hell didn't show it, right? And I think all of us at times in our lives just think about what might not happen, the defeat, what if, the bad side, right?
Yeah, that kind of showed her determination, and also her, like, she was getting what she came for, no matter what, and like you said, even though there had to be some fear associated with it, she wasn't going to let that fear interfere with her. And that's what us as entrepreneurs really, it's like, yeah, every day we wake up and we go, oh my gosh, what do I have to deal with today?
Yeah.
You know, and it's that kind of scenario. Yep. Mm-hmm.
And how many times, I know for me, I don't know for you guys, but how many times have other people told you you were crazy? Your idea was crazy. It wasn't going to happen, wasn't going to match. I mean, when I still have people telling me I'm crazy for starting nlbp. And I'm just like, and I have to constantly know in my head, you're just not my people. You're just not my people. Like, I know it's going to work. And I think we all go through that. But sometimes the people close to us, even friends and family, kind of give us defeating thoughts. And I think they do it because they mean well, but, you know, they're kind of defeating what we are want or need, like our own desires. And sometimes that can get into our heads a little bit. I thought Kelly was going to say something. All right.
What did you want? What? No, I wasn't saying anything.
Okay. Because what happens is when I hear a noise, like your square lights up, and I always have to like see if someone's going to talk. So here's a thought. I'm thinking of a thought. This says, success comes to those who become success conscious. What are some of your thoughts about that? And I underlined another one. I even have Facebook this quote this week because I liked it. We refuse to believe that which we do not understand. That was one of my favorites. We foolishly believe that our own limitations are the proper measure of limitations, right? We think we can't do it, or there's not a way to do it, but there really is. There's some big one just putting it out there. And so limitations aren't necessary. We create our own perceived limitations. Right?
Well, that's kind of been, you know, a real truth is that if you think you can't do it, you won't. You know, and that's the same thing. What, you know, the success thing is, you know, success is there. You know, you just have to know it's there. You know, you have to believe in yourself. And I think that this whole chapter 1, reading it, you know, was the fella, you know, Barnes, I guess it was, he really believed in himself. He really believed, you know, that he was going to be Edison's partner. You know, there was nobody that was stopping him from that thought, no matter what, you know, and I think that that's a part of success is that no matter what's coming at you. Yeah, we have doubts and you know, we wonder if we're going in the right direction, but then when we get ourselves back onto the path of the truth of what it is, it's like, we can do it. We can really, really do it. Yeah.
Another thing I found, I'm on page 32, it says, the master of your fate, the captain of your soul. And he talks about energy and raising people's vibrations in a form of energy moving at an inconceivable high rate of vibration. And that the ether is filled with a form of universal power which adapts itself to the nature of the thought. This blew my mind. This was written in 1937. It's still what we're talking about, and people aren't believing now. I'm like, oh my goodness. It's crazy to me because I can't conceive 1937 what they knew or didn't know about science. And I'm curious if all of those men that he listed also believed in universal energy connected to thought, because it sounds like they did, right?
Mm-hmm.
It says it transmutes our thoughts into the physical equivalent if we just stay there.
I found it interesting that all the time prior to this edition, I always saw mastermind. You know, when people join a mastermind, it was one word, mastermind, referring to the group. And here it was described more as the master space mind. So there's the mind that's the master that everybody is linked into. Again, going back to the ether part, how people are connected. And it's the collection of of them reaching into it to get the answers to help make each of them successful.
Yeah, and which is now on our website. I don't know the exact quote, but it's the idea that when you bring like-minded people together, kind of like what we do, a greater mind comes out of it. So if you brought two minds together, there's this third mind that's even greater. The combination of your thoughts and ideas together is where mastermind comes from. And it's true, right?
Yeah.
Like I think on our own calls, like when we come together for like the what works, what doesn't, and why, and everyone helps each other as a collaboration, somebody comes up with a good idea that helps somebody else who couldn't think of it there, or when we're talking about a specific thing, something better comes out of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
It says we must magnetize our minds.
And that's, I think, what it is when groups come together. We all know that everything is available to us in the ether, if we're going to call it that, okay? But when you get more than one person concentrating on it at the same time, I think that's the word. It magnetizes it to that group so that it makes it, much more available. So someone in the group is going to go, boom, they're going to pull the thought right out, just like you said, and someone's going to benefit from it, or the whole group's going to benefit from it. So again, it goes back to the law of attraction, like attracts like kind of scenario, and what you're focusing on is what you're going to bring forward. And that's kind of, what this book is in a nutshell for me, is what you're focusing upon is what you're bringing forward for yourself. Mm-hmm.
Positive or negative?
Both, right?
I was gonna say positive or negative, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Right. I lost my train of thought. It was thought. I lost my train of thought. Okay. I was going to say something about when the group comes together. Oh, I know. Sue, I think you and I talked about this the last time we were together for your coffee, that our group, specifically NLBP, really as a mastermind has such ability, because if you thought as a group we set any intention, and put all of our thoughts towards it because of where we are and who we are, like-mindedness, and I think our vibrations are probably a little higher than some, that think of the work we could do or the ideas we could bring together, if we just kind of pulled ourselves together. That's how I feel. I like the group though, so. All right, chapter 2, desire. The starting point of all achievement, the first step towards riches. So the introduction was just about thought, and the second one is all about desire. Kelly had said her thing about desire and having a little trouble with that. So when they were talking,
I understood the point though. I understood the point that they were making. It's just sort of, again, what I've been taught over time. So I looked at it more as a purpose or a passion or something, the driving force, whatever that was. And so I was able to sort of reframe that so that the word didn't have a charge for me.
Yeah. I think of it more of as passion, what I would consider passion today.
Yeah. Because I like Sue, when Sue was saying, she, going to vet school, it was like, there was nothing else, right? It was just driven.
Right.
I was talking with my brother about this today, and I said, that's exactly what it was like for me. There was nothing else. I just wanted to complete medical school, right? So that's kind of where it was. That's what I was all about. And then that goal happened. So if you applied that same level of drive and intensity with every other aspect of something that you are going after, how can it not come to fruition?
Right.
This is when they were talking about Barnes. Hi, Jaime. We're in chapter 2 right now. Barnes succeeded because he chose a definite goal, placed all of his energy, all of his willpower, and all of his effort, everything to back his goal. He believed in his mind that he was the partner of Edison every minute of the time. And then later it says he burned all of his bridges behind him. Good idea?
Yeah.
We always say don't burn those bridges, but I think at times when you like read this, he knew he was going to be in a better place, right? I think sometimes people try to keep certain relationships or things or doors open that should be closed.
Mm-hmm.
No turning back. Just like burning those ships.
Right? So sometimes burning those bridges, you know you can't go back, only propels you more forward.
Mm-hmm.
Any other thoughts on that?
Yeah, this is Robin. I actually saw that as burning those bridges basically pushed the people away that would feed negativity to what his desire was or what his goal was, you know, what he wanted to achieve. That's how I saw that.
Yeah. I mean, that makes sense. Like, I think what we said, like in the intro part, was not everybody is really supportive of whatever our passions or whatever our personal path is. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Anybody else?
Well, again, for me, it was kind of like the law of attraction. You know, you're gonna, if you've already got the premise in your, you know, the picture that you've succeeded, that you're doing what you want to do, you're drawing from the universe what you want, you know, or what you desire. And, you know, that's what, you know, Barnes, he was already, you know, with Edison. He was Edison's partner. There was nothing that was stopping him. So how could he not get anything but what he wanted? You know, that's what I took from it is, you know, and again, I just think of my life when I knew I wanted to become a veterinarian, and it was just, that's what I geared my life towards, you know. So, you know, part of when I read this stuff, I thought, oh, I could say that about my life. And I'm sure each of us could. Each of us, there's something in our life, you know, that we did or have done, you know, that is like this, you know, which is a beautiful thing. It really is. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think you're right. Everyone has something special. And this just says he left himself no possible way of retreat. He had to win or perish. I think that's like an entrepreneurial thing too.
Mm-hmm. It's an all-in scenario.
Yeah.
You know,
it's hard sometimes.
Yeah, well, it's the success consciousness that says it's a worthy cause, I deserve it, and I'll find a way, versus the failure consciousness from the last chapter, which is more, let me stay inside the box and let me try this without really fully buying into it. And you know, there's numerous examples, you know, even beyond the book of you know, when you put your full mindset into something, you know, things start to collaborate around you that you couldn't even have predicted. For example, there's a quote by Patanjali that suggests that, you know, when you put yourself, you know, forward into a greater purpose, I think it's something like dormant forces, faculties, and talents become alive, and they discover in yourself something more than you ever thought you could be. But you have to buy in. Like you have to go for it. You have to almost, you know, leap before you know where you're going to land. And and that's not always easy, and it's certainly not easy for certain personality types or certain mindsets based on how we've been brought up. If you've been brought up to never make a mistake, then you almost be paralyzed in this idea of being all in and figuring it out later. Yeah.
Or a lot of times I see in the entrepreneur world, because that's where most of us are, the idea that people like that steady paycheck, like let me keep one foot in a different job, or you know, let me do this other thing part-time that I really hate. And for me, I'm constantly telling people don't do that, because one is a safety net. you hate doing it, so it's pulling away your focus. And if you take that leap, as scary as it is, not to pay your mortgage or your bills or, you know, have a steady paycheck, you work so much harder and come up with different ways to make money when you have none. I think that's where you rise as an individual when you take that leap and burn all bridges behind you. This says every person who wins in an undertaking must be willing to burn his ships and cut all sources of retreat. Scary way to do it, but and that's what he said. That's where they came up with the idea of burning desire. Pretty cool. I just connected that right now. Willing to not have that way to retreat. All right, so I'm on page 42, where it talks about persistence, which does not recognize failure. And he goes through his 6 definite practical steps to achieving riches, and they start to be the first steps of what's going on, right? Only those who become money conscious ever accumulate great riches. Money consciousness means that the mind has become so thoroughly saturated with the desire for money that one can see oneself already in the possession of it. Particularly here he's talking about money. I think it works with anything, and having the definiteness of purpose. So I'm curious, did anyone go through these 6 steps and actually create their own like manifesto or whatever he called it?
I did it previously.
I have mine from years ago, just sitting here.
Yeah.
It's actually for NLBP.
I have one of
I carry this in my pocket.
There you go. How many of you have taken the time to say it? I don't know how many. I know it's at least every day, but do you look in the mirror and say
once
it?
in the morning, once at night.
Well, twice. Supposed to.
Do you, Paul, do it twice?
No,
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm saying it was twice. You're supposed to do it in the morning and the evening.
Oh, it was, okay, in the morning and the evening. Jaime, do you do it?
I'll be honest. I go back and forth.
Okay,
There are times that, how do I explain this? There are times that I drift, and I always try to figure out what it is, but then I always go back. But I feel every time I go back, I feel better about it. And like, I've burned my bridges. And yeah, I don't know when I'm going to pay my next mortgage and how this is going to happen. And I'm thinking like, how is this going to happen? But then I say to myself, I'm just going to do it. And somehow it always works out. You know, I want to get to the point where I'm not like that anymore.
Yeah,
I think I'm working towards that. But, you know, and, I went through that period again. And of course, but, the thing is, I always carry this with me. It's always in my pocket. And I do look at it a lot. And then, there are times when I will sit down and say it and do the whole thing. So, but I still need to work on it.
Yeah. I will tell you, when I read this book, like a year and a half ago, when I took this edition, that's what this is stuck in here from. And I did do it morning and night for a long time. But then as I read it, I wondered if I actually believed it. And then I think I started creating my own limiting beliefs as I continued. Where here in the book, he writes, by the second week, you're going to start to believe it, because even a liar believes his own lies, right? And I was like, I've just felt like I was lying to myself. So it is hard. It's probably something I should go back and do.
Actually, that's kind of what stops me.
Yep.
Sometimes I start to feel that, and I drift from it.
Yeah.
So.
But do you think maybe, like, I haven't done this, but do you think maybe part of it may be that, the sense is that we drift from it because I know what he's saying is that if you really keep going, it becomes part of you. But like where the level we're at, and I'm just going to say this, if it's not really what your soul's here to do, you may have a hard time really doing it. Even though what Hill is saying is you should be able to override that.
Right. I see what you're saying.
You know what I'm saying is like I would think if it's really truly what you want and what your soul wants and what you're here for, you'll do it. You'll be able to do it. You know, but yet I understand what Napoleon's saying. You know, but yet at the same time, it makes me think, well, there can be, I think, exceptions to everything. And, you know, what you two guys just said, to me, makes sense. It makes total sense. Yeah.
Where I think it broke down for me is attaching my desire to money.
Mm-hmm.
Like he attaches it all to money.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a big believer that if I follow my passion and desire, the money follows.
Mm-hmm.
So the way he had it here was, you know, to come up with the gross amount of money and the time frame.
Mm-hmm.
I guess that's one way of doing it, because the book is Think and Grow Rich. You know, and it does talk about riches. But in my mind, like even with NLBP, I think members, like to me, it's a number. So if I reach that number of members and the synergy and the programs that I have in my mind, and they all start rolling out, having the members, the money will follow. You know what I'm saying? Like, so it's more of a personal, like I feel like I'm on a mission, and the money has, to me, the money is not the factor. Like getting to my end goal, my purpose. So that's where I got stuck. But I guess if people are picking up this book, it could go either way. And I do suppose I could rewrite it with a different, instead of having the dollar to use, like, you know, so many members, or for any of you, so many patients, so many clients, so many whatever it is, you know. And I do it monthly, and I do positive affirmations of what I need to do each month, and that I increase on my own. So, because to me, it's like a smaller chunk, you know, and I keep saying, like, my goal is to get NLBP to like 1,000 members, 1,000 members, 1,000 members. And I just keep, that's my goal, because that's our tipping point where it matters. So did anyone else have trouble with the money, or did you include the money? How'd you guys all do it?
Well, could you clarify number 2? I got stuck on number 2. Could you clarify what number 2 means?
Determine exactly what you intend to give in return for money you desire. There is no such reality as something for nothing. Well, something that you're giving up. So it could be something in your personal life. I'll tell you something. Oh, this, of course, is just recording it, so it's not really a secret. I feel like for my own dream, I gave up my marriage. Because there was no way I could get where I wanted and still be married. So that's just, you know, something personal I gave up. But it could be your time. It could be, I think in the book, actually, wait, this could be background knowledge for me. I'm not sure if it was in the book. But Napoleon Hill, like when he gave up his, like literally gave up 20 years of his life to do this study with Andrew Carnegie. He had an obligation to pay for, I think it was his brother's or his cousin's or someone's college. And he was trying to figure out, well, how do I do it? I've made the commitment already. So you have to give up something to get something else some of the time. I can't say that that's all of the time. But in his thing, you can't get something for nothing. You give up something, right?
Well, I think that's just what the point was that you have to do something. You can't just expect something just to come to you because you want it. You have to give something in return, your time, your efforts, come up with a plan, do something for somebody else.
Okay.
Yeah, for me, the giving part was not giving up, was more giving, providing a service.
That's what I was thinking.
that's the way I interpreted that. I mean, there's sacrifice, don't get me wrong. There's plenty of sacrifice, and you're giving up things.
Yeah.
I mean, so that's part of it. But every time I read that sentence, I always see it as providing a service.
Right.
That's what I was thinking.
What you're going to do.
What
Wait,
you're
I
gonna
didn't
do.
have to get divorced. No, I'm kidding.
I think
There must have been other reasons, don't.
and
I'm blaming on the book, but no.
And as for the money thing, I always, whenever I see the money thing, to me, it's just a way for anyone can relate to. Money is something that is concrete, it's countable, you can track it and do things, but it doesn't have to be money. It could be anything, anything that your goal is. Money just makes it easy. And of course, he's no dummy. He was marketing, so if people want to make money, a lot of people, and you have that part of it too. I mean, to do that. But I think the essence or the lesson is whatever your goal, money, relationships, losing weight or whatever it is, it can be anything, not money. Just money makes it easy.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm going to come out. Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I'm going to come out and say, I don't like the idea where he says, come up with the exact amount, come up with the exact date. Because I understand that for, the SMART goals, they're measurable, they're specific, they have a date, there's time, all that kind of stuff. A lot of times when you have that amount, it could actually limit you what you could get because you're stopping. Right? You're saying, I want 1,000 members. Great, you're going to get 1,000 members, and then what? You're going to go, yeah, I got it. Okay, now I'm going to think about more? Or is it, right, there's all kinds of different things that can happen. So rather than come up with that amount, I think about things other than, or things like what it will do for me. Right? So I don't have a specific number in mind for my business, but I know that I want my business to support me and my family. And that's the level that we want to get to. Or I want to have the recurring income support all my expenses so that everything else that I do when I go out and I create a new website or I get a new customer that way, that's extra and on top.
Gravy.
Yeah.
I think the reason for picking a number is to give something concrete that feeds into your brain and your subconscious and gets you to that goal. But I don't think that number should stay that number. And I think it should be a number beyond what you would normally expect. I think, like I always say, shoot high. And if you achieve it, that's fantastic. Then you just jump to your next goal and set that new number. That's the way I always looked at it. I didn't think it as a limiting thing. I think having that number just makes your brain, it just helps program you better to achieve that goal, having something concrete.
And the same thing applies to putting a date on something. I think of myself, if I put a date on something and it's like, oh shit, I've only got 3 more days. It really gets me to do it, So picking a number, I think the same way for money is it's like, okay, I got to really get that number, so it is a little bit of a drive. It helps to drive us. I think you're right. Yeah.
I think the accuracy of the number and the date allows us to fully believe what we're saying, because if we don't fully believe the statement, then we'll move away from it, particularly in the low times. And then once we move away from it, then we don't say it, and then we get off track. So it's having what we call in the company emotionally doable components, or emotionally doable goals, where you can actually see yourself getting there. And then, as Jaime said, it's moving. It's always moving a few steps in front of you to keep you moving forward. I've had this particular statement, and I just keep adjusting the date and the number, or the date and the outcome on it, and I keep the rest the same. I haven't said it as much as I should, but it is still moving along, just based on what times I do. I come back to it. I've come back to this book probably 3 or 4 times over the past 3 or 4 years. It just keeps coming back, so keeps knocking on my head.
I was listening to his name's totally escaping me. Wait, hold on. I'm gonna look it up real quick. And he said, where's my YouTube?
You've got 10 seconds. David said you can find anything in 10 seconds.
9.
I'm looking up my history because I don't know, it's totally
5.
escaping me.
3 now.
Why
2
can't I find it? Okay. Damn.
Sounds like.
It's a famous, you'd know exactly who. Proctor.
Bob Proctor.
Bob Proctor. So I was listening to Bob Proctor today, and he says he literally reads a chapter of this book every single day for the last 25 years of whenever that thing was done. And I was like, so he just keeps starting over, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Or he reads a piece of it every single day. There's a 45-minute talk he does on YouTube that was phenomenal.
Isn't that Science of Growing Rich?
No, You Were Born Rich is Bob Proctor.
I thought the book he's always done. Doesn't matter.
No, he was actually doing this book.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, Think and Grow Rich is Bob Proctor's book. He's got.
Oh my God, yeah. I was just
original copy, I think.
Today I was just seeing how other people interpreted different things as I was doing the later chapters and writing my notes, and then I just kind of went off on, I had no idea, like Oprah Winfrey and Bob Proctor and Tony Robbins, and all of them have said how this book gave them riches. Like they feel like without this book they wouldn't have had their dream. And that just got me like, whoa, let me look up that. I go on tangents. Like that to me was phenomenal. And Arnold Schwarzenegger was one of them. Like it was just phenomenal. Like they gave the list of people that they studied in the beginning, and now I'm looking up the list of people that still follow the book and are still wildly successful. I thought that was incredible, and their interpretations of the books and how it influenced their lives and how they did it. So I kind of want to find out their individual stories of, did they read it every day? Did they, make their little manifesto and put it on their bathroom mirror and do it? Like, I'm just curious how other people did it.
Or did they, one of the things I think of is, did they at times of their weakness also, come to this in a way of saying, okay, this is something that can bring me back on track again, which is very true. It really can, just reading some of the little stories that he, talks about. It's like, as he talks about his son in here, it's like, wow.
Yeah.
That was just like, that story alone, could make you want to go, well, wow, anybody can do this. Anybody, it's remarkable.
I think, I agree. To achieve anything great, you have to have that drive. You have to have that desire.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't mean 100% of people will do that, but if you don't, no one will do it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where great achievement comes from.
Yeah. And it's our own beliefs. It's like the guy that did the 4-minute mile.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And look how many people broke the 4-minute mile afterwards.
Yeah.
Because they can say, you can do it.
Oh, it can be done.
Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah. It says no one is ever defeated until defeat has been accepted as their own reality.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Bastards.
Mm-hmm.
There's a difference between wishing for a thing and being ready to receive it. I think that's another thing, being ready to receive it, right? Mm-hmm. Sometimes we have a plan, we can exit. I've seen people self-sabotage. Mm-hmm. I see it in our own community. They're doing it, they're following their plan, they're getting their clients, the money's coming in and everything's going, and then they do something to sabotage and stop it all. And trying to find out what that belief is, because I'm starting to learn just through the psyche work that I'm doing, that almost everything is rooted in like a self-worth. They don't believe that they're deserving of it, which has been fascinating, the stuff that I've been figuring out because I'm seeing like these common threads with entrepreneurs because I'm only doing business. That it's usually a grief or a loss or a self-worth issue. It has been amazing what people just don't feel they're worthy of something. So even if they're getting the money and everything's coming, they're somehow losing it again, or something has fallen apart, and it's a constant circle. And now we can start to look for messages behind that pattern. But it's been phenomenal to kind of be on this side and see as I'm coaching people through that. I'm kind of flipping through to see what else I outlined in here. Anyone can jump in if there's something that they've thought of. Oh, I just put a little star by this. Our only limitations are those we set up in our own minds, which is true. All right, so now we're up to the end of desire. Right before we go in, oh, actually, that's the only chapter we did today, right? Look at that. Because I threw faith in for next week, because faith is
next week. Oh, faith is.
You know why? Faith is just like that could be like a whole night. Like when I looked at that chapter, I was like, we cannot do this on the first night. So let's talk about the story of his son, Miss Sue, you just brought up, and how our own beliefs kind of play into things. The story of his son, I thought, was remarkable, especially when he went through to say that he had no ability to hear, or the equipment, not the ability, but the equipment itself that was in there, that it didn't even have it in his own limitations. And his son was brought up to not believe he had a limitation when they talk about his paper route, and he went out, and then he kind of used it to his advantage, which I loved. And I will just say that one of the things that scares the crap out of me today is we tend to label everybody, every kid, everything. And I think it really does a disservice to people.
Once you label them,
yeah,
it's like when you give them a diagnosis, the same thing happens.
Yes, I agree. They live up to it, right?
I think the fascinating thing about that story of his son is what caught my eye is that they refused to teach him sign language.
Yeah, I thought that was really interesting.
So, you refuse him to teach him sign language, and he's got no other choice. His boats are burned.
Yeah.
So that's what jumped out at me when I read that piece.
Yeah. So I think that is very, very interesting.
Okay.
Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, any thoughts about when he mentions his brother sounded like he was just a little crybaby baby and didn't have the drive that his other son, who was deaf, had.
Oh, his other son. Yeah.
His other son. There was a little thing in saying that, his other son would just whine and cry if he didn't get anything, where his deaf son would go out and take care and do it. So you got two siblings, very different attitudes. And was it his the deafness, the challenge, the thing made him go beyond what, was that the reason for it? Or I just thought, I don't have the answer to that. I was just, remember that stuck out to me.
Yeah, but it could also be that, a mom of 3 kids, that I see this happen. It could also be the one child that is like so quote normal. The other one was getting the attention all the time.
Yes, that
so the way that he got attention was something had to go wrong. He had to do something, right, to get that same attention. So that was interesting. When I was a kid, probably all of you guys too, we were talking about labeling. We didn't label, like you didn't know you had learning disabilities. You didn't know like all the stuff they know today. I didn't actually know I was dyslexic until my 40s, when one of my daughter got diagnosed. And she got diagnosed in the 4th grade, and we took her for all of this testing, and they said, she's dyslexic and it's 100% genetic, so it comes from somebody. And I was like, Right? And I took the test and I failed miserably. And I was like, oh my God. But for years, I thought I was just stupid or I couldn't, and not in my 40s, but when I was younger, like, and I knew I didn't catch on, but I knew I understood things, but I couldn't comprehend everything the exact same way. And the interesting was, because that's all I knew, like, and there was no label for it. But my father's also dyslexic, which it was really funny. My sister, I'm one of five. One of my sisters, myself and my dad, were all dyslexic, but we didn't know until my daughter. And we found out what dyslexia was. And it's actually like a processing thing. Like people think of it as like you do reverse things, but it's also like a processing thing. Like I can think things, but I can't actually say them all the time, or I can't get the syllables out in the same thing. And my sister, my father and I used to make fun of each other. Like it was just like this weird thing. And my maiden name's Lise. We just thought it was a Lise thing. Like it was kind of odd. And then when she was diagnosed, we did it. But another thing, I can't spell because of it, but I could never, ever spell. So for me to get through spelling class in grade school, I had to come up with acronyms or like other words that meant things. And I could only memorize it for the test itself. Like as soon as I walked out of that test, there was no way I could do it. And I couldn't memorize it for life. It was just to pass the test. And when my daughter came in, I realized she couldn't spell either. And I was like, okay, it's genetic. None of us can spell. So I would teach her that trick. And my father taught me the trick. It was like the funniest thing. And then we found out we were dyslexic and I was like, oh my God. But my father had always said, my oldest is autistic, but we found this all out in the same year. And he said, don't ever teach her that she is. Just teach her what she can do. Like, don't ever label her. Mainstream her, do everything. And we refused all help, all everything. And the kid's on Dean's List in college today. The nice thing was she came back and she thanked us for not allowing her to kind of be the victim of what she is, but by making her mainstream and and sometimes it probably was more difficult, but I think the point was the labeling thing. I think if I had known that I had a learning disability, I probably would have thought to myself, well, I probably can't do it.
Do it.
I can't do it. Yep.
Throw in the towel.
Now I'm like, listen, I can't spell. It's not going to happen. Now I embrace it. Or just go.
That's also the same thing he did with his son, too, with the hearing. What you did with your daughter is the same exact thing he did with his son with the hearing.
Mm-hmm.
I know. That's why I was reading it going, yeah. It was very interesting. And the interesting thing is different teachers felt very differently about it. Like, in certain situations, you could be considered an abusive parent for doing that.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a tough one. So
like immunizations, right? Getting shots for kids these days. Some parents go, no shots for the kids, and others go, give them everything. And
yeah, it's all perception, really. All right, so I'm flipping through the book real quick, see what everyone else. I thought someone said something. So it was just the refuse to accept the possibility of death. Oh, this is when he was talking about his friend, which I've also seen in healthcare when people don't take a diagnosis of death or whatever something bad is, and they don't believe it, right? Their belief can, and we've seen that, their belief can make physical changes within them, right? This is how big that belief system is. We can go off on a tangent on that, at least I can. But it's a desire backed by faith.
I was just looking at that, yeah.
Yeah, is how they end this chapter.
and with faith, the way I also think of it is having the desire and backing it with emotion, with the feeling that, you know, it's there. It's one thing to have a thought and go, oh yeah, it's kind of nice, I'll do that, or, right? But when you actually feel it, you know, in your core, that's when you know things will happen, even if you can't see it, right? Even if you don't know how you're going to get there, even if you don't know what to do, you know that it will occur. You'll get to it.
Right. Abraham says that too, and I think it was in here, and he actually says it 2 chapters from now that we'll talk about next week. But
and that's what I'm studying right now, is a book called You Can't Afford the Luxury of a Negative Thought. And when I read this part in the book, it was exactly that, is that, you know, don't let those negative things come in because you're just fueling for something that you don't want. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So on that same note, it was a conversation I was having. I don't know. I don't even know if it was any of you. It's a conversation I was having that. And we do this a lot as a society. We focus on the negative, like the war against drugs, and drug use increased. And, you know, when everyone started hating Trump got elected, because they're putting so much thought into the negative side of it, they're creating it.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Law of attraction.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And people don't realize it. But it works the opposite.
Mm-hmm.
And someone said, you know, why are we not focusing on peace, or focusing on nonviolence, or focusing on, you know, the good of it, the positive part, instead of the negative part? Because when we focus our attention, we're creating that by bringing all the attention to it.
It's like having the goal, I don't want any more bills, right? I don't want any more credit card debt. I don't want to be poor, right? It's all the things that you don't want. Even when you say you don't want it, you're still bringing that into the light.
Exactly what you're bringing, right? And living in a scarcity mentality. This is something I've personally been working on, and constantly saying, I hear, I do it myself. Like, I always wanted to travel. And this year I decided, well, then why aren't I traveling? Because I'm always like, when I have the money, when I do this. And I'm like, if I just do it and stop having this scarcity attitude, maybe more money will flow to me, and do it that way. That, you know, you're keeping yourself in that negative place, right? Saying, I don't have enough, I don't have enough, I don't, and you perpetuate not having enough. Or, you know, I don't have the contacts, I don't have the time, I don't have whatever it is you're not feeling, right? I don't have the clients, I don't have the knowledge. A lot of people don't think they're smart enough. I see that a lot.
I don't have the credentials.
Yeah, if I just learn one more thing, one more modality, especially in this world, people just keep packing on the modalities. You know.
More modalities.
One more workshop, one more, and that's usually not it. That's also a thing of self-worth, I think. You're not smart enough as somebody else, right?
Or you're getting ready to get ready.
Getting ready to get ready to get
ready.
I'm
planning to get ready to get ready.
Yeah. All the time we see it. But yeah, so they finished this chapter just saying desire must be backed by faith. And I just wrote in the margins, allowing, like trusting the universe and allowing, which is what we say. He's the ether, or the universe, spirit, God, whatever you believe in, subconscious, superconscious, higher self, whatever your word is. It's just backed by faith. And then later in the chapters, we'll see that faith has to be connected with an emotion to actually change a subconscious belief. All right, that concludes this week. Any thoughts? Last minute things we can do better, differently?
I like it. It was good.
Yeah, it was perfect.
Yeah, I think so. For the next time, it's the next 3 chapters. So it'll be faith, 3, 4, and 5. which I actually,
4 is short, right? That's the auto suggestion. Like, beep.
yeah, but 3 is going to take us half the
Very
day.
long.
Holy God. Yeah, so I just did those 3 chapters today. Well, in the last 2 days. I did 2 of them today to write out, just kind of see how long it would take. Because it's one long chapter. Faith is a big one, big discussion. And the next 2 are kind of small, auto suggestion and specialized knowledge, which won't have a lot of discussion. As we get into some of the bigger part of the book and the planning and stuff, like one of them is like
800 pages.
I think planning is like like one of them's really long.
What
so
the
kind of see if we have to kind of rework whatever. I'm just trying to stay ahead of everybody else as they rework it and try to figure out how much these books are. You know, how much work it is. But this was pretty good.
Sorry, I was late. I'm bummed I missed the beginning.
Lucky for you.
Oh, it's fine.
You missed the intro. So any other thoughts before we go? Was the pace okay? Discussions good? All right.
I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Good. It's my first book club, so.
So funny you did that when I just decided to start reading it again, and then
It's collective consciousness.
exactly.
It's a coincidence. Stop saying that.
Thousand monkey.
Somebody needs to reread chapter 2.
The best part about it is I can say something like that and everybody understands and gets it. You know, other places they go, oh yeah, it is. Interesting, isn't that? Who would have thought? That was a great comment though, David.
I started a discussion on Facebook today. I forgot what I even posted, but someone wrote something about, you know, faith followed by desire or something. And I happened to have the book in my hands, and I wrote back exactly what, wait. Oh, here it is. And I wrote back, faith, the second step toward riches. Because that's how the things.
Oh.
I don't know who got it, but it's out there.
Every time Camille posts, I'm like, oh, she's reading another chapter of the book.
Yeah.
And you can also, just so you know, you can subscribe to the Napoleon Hill Foundation, and they'll send you a quote a day.
I get that every day.
Or you can just follow me on Facebook.
I've gotten this for years.
Well, which one? You know, it's such a toss-up.
And Camille, I don't know whether I mentioned this, but this particular version of the book is actually in the public domain.
Yeah, you
So
mentioned that. I didn't know that.
So there's a PDF available of the book, so you don't even need to buy the book. I printed it out. It's in a binder. And I like the big paper, so I can write, you know, big margins in a binder.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. It's a good one.
There's also numerous. Well, I actually have a two cassettes set that I had as a cassette that I turned into an MP3 that sort of mimics the book. You know, the first 20 minutes of the 4-side cassette is up to chapter 2. So it actually has Napoleon Hill talking.
Yeah.
Like he explained his son's experience. It's Napoleon Hill talking about that.
Oh, I'll have to listen to that.
Yeah.
So I got it on Audible when I decided to do the book club.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't have to just keep reading. And I learned so differently. So as I outline each chapter, I sit there and I follow it as I listen to it.
Yeah.
Because then I can stop and write my thoughts are different. So I can write my thoughts as I'm hearing it right in the book where I'm reading it. So
There are different Audible versions as well.
yes.
Like there's one with Napoleon Hill, excerpts of him talking about different parts of it.
Mm-hmm.
It's a little slightly abridged, but it's interesting.
That's the one I think I have that was on cassette. I turned it into an MP3.
Yeah. And then Earl Nightingale does kind of a synopsis of Think and Grow Rich, which was, I kind of like it. It's quick, 45-minute thing. And that's a nice thing to listen to once in a while. And yeah, there's so many different versions of this. It's, must be a good book.
I think they said it was like one of the top 10 best or most published books. I don't know if it was top 10, but like one of the biggest read books or something. Like, it's a big one.
Yeah.
But I guess all versions though.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So I would like to see a side-by-side version or something that's like italics that's different. David, in the one that they published, does it tell you what made it to print and what didn't?
No, it's just the book you have, but it's in a PDF form.
Oh, okay.
I'm assuming it's exactly the same because it's the 1927 version or
37.
1937 version, yeah.
Yeah, it probably is because I got this is from the foundation. There's like a whole thing on it. That's why I bought this one, because the sales go back to the foundation. So, all right. Well, I am going to end this tonight.